Well, good morning, everyone. And we are back and ready. Sorry about that. I actually have something in my throat. We are back again. And Jed, Jim, it's always good. And how did you guys do this past week?
I don't know. I was telling Tommy if you guys saw, I lost by one freaking point in the Walter White League.
I
And
know.
you know what's worse? Here's what's worse, guys. I think there's going to be a stat correction because the guy I was playing had the Philly D, and I think that last extra touchdown. If you watch the game, Washington got a, basically Philly tried to do like a, throw around special, and they got a touchdown right at the end. I think that there's a stat correction because now the Philly D gave up too many more points. It went to the next tier. So I think the guy I'm playing actually gets a point less. So we'll see if that stat correction happens. But yeah, I lost by a freaking
Because I'll help you. Did you see in our Walter White League, seven people are in first place at 6-4.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Tommy. I
Yeah.
was like, Tommy is like what he's got like 9-1 or something, but he's not out of it. I was like,
No,
you're not out of it. Yeah, like
Technically,
everyone
you can still, if you win every game, you can still make it because it's so close.
Yeah, it's cool. It's pretty competitive, so it's interesting.
I do enjoy. I mean, it's got 12 teams.
Yeah, it's
but
a tough league.
I actually don't mind it. Like, it's actually pretty fun.
No, I haven't enjoyed it. Javonte Williams is gone. J.K. Dobbins is gone. Cam Akers is man, I have a skeleton crew trying to run this thing.
Yeah. I will say I have Justin Fields instead of So I have Justin Fields and Justin Herbert on both on one of my teams, and I decided to play Justin Fields this week, and that was a good choice because I mean the last three games, he's been averaging close to 40 points a game.
Yeah, no, Fields has been. I was just thinking how in our keeper league, Charlene was really smart because that's a huge get. I mean, I've got Kyler Murray, you guys know, in that league, but still, Fields has been unbelievable, and it does look like it looks like it's going to continue. I mean, if he can do this with the lack of pieces he has now, and remember the Bears have how many draft picks from the two defensive players that they traded away. There's really some hope in Chicago.
Yeah. Hey, in the Walter White League, you have what do you call it, Justin Fields?
No, Charlene. I don't know who has Justin Fields. I will say, Jed, you might want to watch Kyler Murray because here in Arizona, they are calling for Colt McCoy to be the starting quarterback.
Well, after they won, after they won. I mean, there's been, and then you saw that Murray and Hopkins had a little bit of a dust up too on the sideline. So yeah, it hasn't been great, unfortunately, but I feel like he still has the talent there. So I don't know. See,
Jed, just to let you know, my Walter White League, my starting quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo. That's how desperate I am. And here's how desperate I am. My backup sitting in the wings, Deshaun Watson.
Oh, boo. That's not, I mean, honestly, if you're in last place, he definitely could. I mean, if you think about it, if you look on the waiver wires, there's nobody like a Deshaun Watson that could just suddenly get you 20, 25, 30 points. So that's smart.
Tom, did you win against Phil? I didn't look. Did you win against Phil or lose?
No, I mean, I scored 194 points, but this guy who I played against scored 211 points.
Yeah, but he's got a good team because I'm playing him this week, and he's got a stacked team.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is a lot of times I have DeAndre Hopkins, Damian Pierce, Cole Kmet, Devontae Foreman, Chris Godwin, Jamal Williams, Christian Kirk. That's a really good team, and my starting quarterback is Joe Burrow or Tom Brady. But and Jamar Chase, I just made a trade with Jamar Chase. So I have a pretty good team, but I'm sitting there in the 8th place in terms of playoff ranking. Yesterday's game. Did you guys watch yesterday's game? Hey, Philadelphia Eagles lost their first game. Brian Robinson, he scored that last-minute touchdown.
Yeah, that was honestly though. I think if you watched, Philly just kept shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, they could have definitely won that game, but it was another game where if you saw the line, it was 11.5 points. So I was definitely like, okay, Washington is not going to be beaten by that much. And sure enough, they actually won. But they deserve to. I mean, Philly just made too many mistakes.
Jim, Brian Robinson, 26 carries, 86 yards, and 1 touchdown. Where does he rank in terms of your waiver wire pickups this week?
I think he's worth a waiver wire consideration. I think there's a couple of other players that I'm looking at, like a Christian Watson that I was texting you guys and said I wanted to talk about. But look, if you're needing running back help, the only thing that concerns me is Antonio Gibson is still there. So he's still getting the bulk of the passes. The other thing I was looking at and considering too is Carson Wentz technically can come off the IR next week. So I wonder if they're going to replace him with Taylor Heineke with Carson Wentz.
Oh, I actually think Tyler Heineke has deserved a chance to really be able to continue to be a starter for the foreseeable future over Carson Wentz.
Did you know that Washington is 10-9 whenever he is the quarterback? And I think he's got like a little bit over 500 winning percentage. Whereas like if you had the other quarterbacks, it was like less than 300.
You saw that on the broadcast yesterday at the Monday Night Football broadcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Judge, speaking of Christian Watson, came out with the ankle issue this past Monday, so he's limited with the ankle issue with Christian Watson. And the problem is his health. Is a lot of times he was gone for a couple of weeks, came back, did a very good job, and now potentially has an ankle issue.
Yeah, you just wonder if if he's one of these guys who explodes, gets 3 touchdowns in one game, but then that's it, right? And he's just like a one.
Sammy Watkins?
Yeah, exactly. Like a Sammy Watkins. Exactly. So that's the only issue. But I think in Green Bay, they're so desperate. Aaron Rodgers is so desperate. I mean, he's got to know this is because the main thing you guys kept hearing over and over was Watson's speed. I mean, if you saw the one crossing route touchdown he started with 2 defenders in front of him, and then he basically just outran them to the corner. And so he definitely has the speed. So I don't know. It's worth a flyer, especially at this point in the season. If you're ahead and you're getting into the playoffs, I would get this guy and stash him, and then see if you can throw him out in the playoffs if he repeats his performance next week.
Yeah,
I know we're going to talk about waiver wire pickups here in a little bit, but who would you rather pick? Allen Robinson, who's on most people's waiver wires, and Cooper Kupp is most likely going to be out, or Christian Watson?
I would take Christian Watson only because I feel like the Rams are in trouble. Even if Stafford is back, I don't feel like their offense has looked good at all. The lack of a running game has really killed the passing game. Whereas at least with Green Bay, they're just going to be airing it out, right? And so I would take Watson in that situation.
I'm tempted to take Allen Robinson because he suddenly becomes, it looks like a lot of times with Cooper Kupp, he may potentially be out with the 4 to 6 week injury. He's the primary wide receiver. Now, even as a primary wide receiver, he hasn't been good. Von Jefferson might emerge, but he's coming back from an injury. And Matthew Stafford's elbow and all that stuff, he's just been inconsistent. There's been no running game. So I would probably lean toward Allen Robinson, just because he's your primary number one, and Christian Watson is inconsistent.
The only thing is, I don't even think he's the number one wide receiver. I actually think that Van Jefferson will actually be a better receiver than Allen Robinson will be on that team.
Yeah.
But I've been really taking a chance on Kyren Williams. I actually think that they have no offense, right? So they're going to have to go with somebody. And so he actually did okay. He got 4 fantasy points, and they used him in the 4th quarter. But I'm willing to take a risk on him.
Hey, Jed, Cam Akers got 6 carries.
Hey, there you go. You can win with 6 carries.
No, you got to feel bad for the Rams. Think about it. They had Todd Gurley a few years ago, and he was like the number 1 runner. Then he went out. Then they had Cam Akers, and they thought he was going to be good, and he's out. Then they brought in Henderson. They keep having these guys go down after they had a decent year. And then Stafford, is not completely healed as well too. So he's kind of going through his issues. They look bad this past week.
It's just this league is so tough. You win a Super Bowl, it's just very hard to maintain that status for the next couple of years. So it's not surprising.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Arizona Cardinals on the other side, Zach Ertz is out for the season, but at the same time, DeAndre Hopkins is doing pretty well. James Conner just came back, is doing okay, and then also Marquise Brown is set to return probably by week 14. They have a buy-in week 13, probably week 14. But did you notice? Benjamin got cut by the team.
I was actually surprised by that because you would think that with Conner kind of being on the injured reserved all this time and taking some time here, you would think that they needed a good backup like an Benjamin.
Yeah. Well, it's a little surprising. I mean, I would say, I was just gonna say that Hopkins has been on that team. He has been so consistent. I've got him on a couple teams, and like even when they're not playing well, even though Murray wasn't playing well, he's still getting his yards. So I've been really happy with that. I guess the one question is I think Marquise Brown. That is a great idea. I hadn't thought about that coming off of IR. That could be really helpful, especially with Ertz out, because then he basically becomes the de facto number 2. So that's not a bad move at all.
Jed, DeAndre Hopkins has saved me in one of my leagues because he has come back and week in and week out. He is my number 1 wide receiver. Godwin has been inconsistent. Christian Kirk has been inconsistent. But week in, week out, DeAndre Hopkins over 10 points every single week.
Yeah, Hopkins is a beast. I mean, you just talk about pure talent. I mean, the guy, it doesn't matter who's at quarterback, he's going to get his catches.
I mean, I'll tell you this: we've got 3 to 4 weeks until quarterfinals start for a number of these leagues. If I were people listening to this, I would keep my eyes on these waiver wires and just see, because a lot of times owners will drop players that usually are pretty good that you can find and pick up that you can use for the playoffs, because sometimes owners make bad decisions these next few weeks.
Well, they're going to get they're not bad decisions per se. They're just getting desperate. I mean, when you're desperate, you can't hold on to guys on your bench. You got to start to clear space and get people who you think can start.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. If you're sitting in a good spot and you're in the playoffs, this is a time to pick those folks off of the waiver wires and prepare for the playoffs.
Like even last week, Cole Kmet was on a lot of different waiver
wires.
Yeah.
And Cole Kmet scored 28 fantasy points.
He's been doing so well for me. Now, at the same time, we have to ask Darnell Mooney is sitting on the waiver wires. Do you take a chance on him, or would you rather go after Allen Robinson? Would you rather go after Marquise Brown? Those are guys that you're sitting there thinking through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of that depends on if you need to win now or if you're planning to win for the playoffs. So for me, like someone like a Marquise Brown, you're playing for the playoffs. Cole Kmet, obviously, if you can get him now. Daryl Mooney, you're basically hoping to hit a home run. Like if you're desperate, Daryl Mooney's not a bad play because you're hoping to just hit a home run and catch a little bit of fire these next couple of weeks. So that's not a bad idea. It's kind of like I took a flyer on that Pittsburgh running back. I'm forgetting his name.
Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, Warren. Yeah, and he scored. So, there's a chance that these next couple of weeks he could get a little hot. And then
No, that's true. By the way, hey, Jed, our trade for Kyle Pitts and DJ Moore hasn't helped either of us.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Because I was looking at DJ Moore the other day. I was like, what? He scored like 4 points or something.
Yeah, I'm hoping with Baker coming back in, things will, I don't know. We'll see, but it has not been good.
Yeah. Hey, like the chance that I took, I just traded Jimmy Olave as well as
Amon-Ra St. Brown
for Jamar Chase. I'm hoping that eventually he'll come back and get me into the playoffs, but I'll squeak by as the 8th. That's all I'm aiming for, the 7th or last 2 playoff spots. And from that point, Jamar Chase lifts me out. So suddenly now I have Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Damian Pierce, all those guys sitting there.
So here's my strategy. Here's my strategy and hope, Jed, is Tommy and I are fighting for that last playoff spot. I don't want him to enter into the playoffs with Jamar Chase and his team. So I need to somehow block him so he doesn't make it to that last play, because there's 8 playoff plays, there's 10 teams, right? So 2 teams will not get in. So I'm hoping he's going to be one of those teams, because if he brings in Jamar Chase at the last minute, and Jamar Chase is averaging 18 to like 25 points a game, it's hard to beat a team like that.
So just so you know, my oldest son was telling me in one of his leagues, they have a team like that who is basically stacked with players coming back from injury, and so the league is conspiring to keep him out of a playoff spot. So he benched his players against the other guy that guy is fighting with to give him a win so that it could bump. I was like, wow, that's like next level strategy.
Yeah.
But in my son's league, they fight hard because the very last person, they always do something that the person in last place has to do something really silly. Yeah. And so they really want that guy to lose.
Yeah.
Flipping over into New Orleans, Olave was terrible. Kamara has terrible. Man, they just need to bench Andy Dalton and put back Jameis Winston.
I think I heard the rumors this week. They said that they're really seriously considering Winston to come in. And they do think that if Winston came in, that would really help. I mean, Jawan Johnson's been great. He scored the touchdown each of the last few weeks. But Olave, Kamara, all of them have not done well since Dalton has come in.
That would be a good if you're desperate for a quarterback. Winston wouldn't be a
Yeah.
bad, take a lottery ticket on that guy.
Yeah. That's why I'm not entirely wanting to dump Taysom Hill yet, because I do think that if they were to bring in Winston, I actually think that there's a role for Taysom Hill. I just don't know if he's complementary to Andy Dunn. Plus, I don't think Dennis Allen is what's his name? Who's the coach?
Sean,
I forgot his name.
Sean,
So yeah, the last coach. Like, I just don't think he's as innovative in terms of a scheme, because they at least used to know how to handle a Taysom Hill, but right now they're really not.
Jim, on Justin Herbert, I know a lot of times you have him in a lot of your leagues. Completed 21 of 35 passes for 196 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception as they lost to the 49ers 22-16. Now, Keenan Allen is supposed to practice this week. Let's hope he plays from his hamstring injury. But other than that, Gerald Everett now is injured. Mike Williams is out.
They have nobody. The only thing that I was surprised, because I was looking at the stats for this week. He's supposed to score 25 points, right? And part of it is because they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs doesn't have the best defense in the world. So they're thinking that at least Herbert will score and dump it off to an Eckler or use Jordan Palmer or something like that too. My only thing is, I mean, if you've watched Justin Herbert in the last few games, he has not scored more than 1 touchdown, averaged about 18 points a game when he should be averaging closer to 30 points a game. So I wonder if there's still something from the ribs situation that he experienced a few weeks ago, but he has nobody else to throw to as well, too.
Yeah. Jed, going on the Miami side, you called it when we were talking about this week. You said, hey, look, if I had a choice between Mostert and Wilson, I'd go pick Jeff Wilson. He had 17 carries, 119 yards, 1 touchdown. He looked very good.
Yeah, I picked him. I was able to get him in one league, not in another, and I'm very happy I did. I mean, he's, basically you can hopefully ride this for the next couple of weeks. So if he is still out there for some reason, definitely go and get him, because it is clear he's the lead. I expect that. So when he first came back from San Francisco, that first week they split carries. This week he had more than Mostert. Mostert was still involved. I expect that to go up again, and you see them feature him more in this next game. So it could be a really good payout.
Yeah. Hey, the Miami Dolphins, Tua has been an outstanding quarterback the last couple of weeks.
He's in consideration for the MVP race, and to just think that in the offseason they were trying to dump that guy, but he's shown that he actually, if he's not injured, he can stay to be a pretty decent quarterback.
And do you guys remember when Tyreek Hill took all that heat in week 1 because he said that Tua was the most accurate quarterback he'd played with? And people thought that he was like throwing shade at Mahomes, but it's clear he wasn't. He was just saying, look, this guy is super accurate, and he is. It's paid out. The one thing I was sad about, Hill was on pace to break 2,000 yard receiving mark, but he only got 50 some yards this past week. So now he's off pace, but we'll see if he can get back onto it.
Yeah.
Hey, but seriously, I think a lot of times Mahomes is the most creative passer in the sense he has all these different arm angles that he could throw at. But Tua, they were talking about on the podcast, extremely accurate, very, very accurate.
Yeah, but he's got some good weapons too, right? Think about it. He's got Gesicki, who's a pretty decent tight end. He's got Waddle. He's got Hill, and then he's got 2 decent, pretty good running backs. That he's been using. Oh, by the way, speaking of it, did you guys see yesterday's game? Who was it? The Commanders kept using 3 tight ends. I didn't know that teams were using more and more 3 tight ends on these schemes.
That's because they probably had a bad offensive line and everyone was just coming through, and they just needed additional passers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jamal Williams, Jim, leads Detroit in rushing in week 10. For you, is he every week started now in the flex? 16 carries, 59 yards, usually over 1 touchdown, even though that touchdown came in the last couple minutes of the game.
I don't know, but I've been reading a lot of articles, both locally in Detroit, but then also national, where they keep saying that Jamal Williams should be the number 1 quarterback over DeAndre Swift. I think Swift is a pretty good runner, right? Like when he's not injured, but Jamal Williams is a big guy who's able to hit those holes, but then he's able to be in the red zone as well too. And so he's been scoring a lot, actually, if you've been watching him as well too.
Yeah, Jed, speaking of the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's no one to catch the ball. There is no one to catch the ball, especially with Hawkinson gone.
Yeah,
I think a lot of times we saw it for over 100 yards, the most that he's gotten in the last couple of weeks. I think we're going to see this for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's been surprising if you think about Detroit. Remember the first 5-6 weeks they were
averaging
the
like 35 points.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were leading the league
yeah.
in offense. And so of course the bad part was the defense was like one of the worst, but still it's very surprising. I don't know if there's an injury in there that we're not aware of. I mean, obviously
But
the
remember
injuries, but
Chark. Chark was
yeah.
one of their guys, and so when he's out, there's nobody else. And Hawkinson was one of their guys too, and he's out too.
Yeah, it's been surprising. I was just thinking Hawkinson has not picked up with the yards I thought he would in Minnesota. I don't think I've heard anything from him.
That's because
Right?
they got Jefferson.
Yeah, well, Jefferson, that last game, guys, that Jefferson, you guys, that might have been the game of even just the century, not like the year. That was an insane game. And that catch I still, every time you watch it, I don't know how he came up with the ball. Like it didn't look like he had it, and then he had it. So it was crazy.
It was funny because here, right as they were about to score that defensive touchdown, based off of NFL rules, if the Arizona Cardinals play, they have to switch to the local game. So a lot of people here didn't see it because they got switched over and they were pissed.
Oh yeah,
and I was watching Red Zone, so I didn't care. But
Yeah.
a lot of people were like, "No, we didn't watch it because they switched over to the Cardinals game."
That's brutal. Yeah, my oldest son made a good point though. He was saying how Tyreek Hill might have the most yards, might be the leading receiver this year, but it's still hard to argue that Justin Jefferson might be still the best wide receiver in the NFL today.
Oh my gosh! And you look back at that trade a couple of years ago where Minnesota made with Buffalo. They traded for a draft pick for Stephon Diggs. That draft pick ended up being Justin Jefferson, who the Bears bypassed, by the way. I mean, he was not the number one wide receiver that year. He's very, very good.
Who did they pick instead of Jefferson? Do you remember that year?
No, but the number one receiver that year was Henry Ruggs from the Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No. There were three receivers taken ahead of him. It was Henry Ruggs, and then it was Jerry Jeudy, and then it was CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
No, look, I can make an argument for CeeDee Lamb. Jerry Jeudy has been terrible. Ruggs I think he's in jail right now, actually. Yeah. Jed, let's go to San Francisco. Deebo Samuel, 2 of 6 targets, 24 yards, and rushed 4 times for 27 yards for about 51 total yards. But your favorite guy, Brandon Ayuk, 6 of 7 targets for 84 yards, but lost the fumble.
Yeah, if not for the fumble, it would have been okay. But that's what we had said with Jimmy G coming back, that raised Ayuk from the dead. And actually took a little bit out of Deebo. But, that was a low offensive production game for 49ers. I expect a little bit of pickup. And honestly, Tommy, I know you got Jimmy G in at least one league. I don't think that's a bad quarterback play. I mean, he's right outside the top 10. I think you're hoping he's in the 12, 13 range. And so I don't think that's actually a bad play.
Tommy, my brother made this.
Oh, go ahead.
Tommy made this trade for Christian Kirk for Deebo Samuel. And at first I was like, I don't know about that. But now that McCaffrey is in, it's really limited the ceiling for Deebo Samuel. And Christian Kirk was one of the players of the week. He scored, 2 touchdowns this week and had 20-something fantasy points.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, let's see. My Jalen Waddle, I ended up trading for Chris Olave, which I then packaged for St. Brown for Jamar Chase. So far, it's been working out well for some of my trades here. But Jim, Elijah Mitchell rushed 89 yards in week 10. Are you even concerned that he's going to take away some carries away from Christian McCaffrey?
No, actually, I was watching this. I don't know what you guys think. My guess is they're trying to not overuse Christian McCaffrey. So actually, it's kind of nice for them to have an Elijah Mitchell there. And he actually had some pretty good runs. But when they really needed a scorer, they went, especially in the red zone, they went straight to Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. Hey, on a separate note, we did not talk about this because we talked a little about Cole Kmet. Justin Fields, if you were to redraft right now, which 2 quarterbacks would go higher before you get to Justin Fields? Is it just Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen? Do you go to Jalen Hurts? Because I think I like Jalen Hurts a lot. Who would you guys pick ahead of Justin Fields?
Yeah, I agree with Jalen Hurts. I think just based on weapons alone, I would take him. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and I'd still put
Justin
Lamar.
Herbert?
No, Jackson.
Oh, Lamar. Okay.
I still put Lamar Jackson in there, but he's right there. I would put him right around QB5, QB6. I think that's where Fields would go. And if you're basing it on potential, then you might argue he's top 3. But as for where they are now and who they have around them, that's who I.
All right. Here's the thing: if you were Charlene, would you keep him as one of your keepers?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know. I got to see who's our keeper.
Yeah, that's the question is like, who is it against? So
Yeah.
I've been debating. So you guys know I got Kyler Murray. I've been thinking I might have to drop him from a keeper this year if things continue the way they're going. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Charlene actually has a pretty good team. I think a lot of times she has Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And so if you keep those guys and Josh Fields, you'll probably have to drop Alvin Kamara is the one that you're probably going to drop.
I'm going to try to convince her to trade one of her top 2 receivers, but she won't trade. I know
that. She usually lets me take a look at it. I say, look, if I were you, I'd trade Justin Fields. If you get Josh Allen out of it, go ahead. Patrick Mahomes, I probably will keep Justin Fields just simply because of the potential. Yeah. Speaking of that, Jim, Najee Harris, someone that you bid a lot in terms of our dynasty, 20 carries, 99 yards, but still no touchdown.
Yeah. I don't know. You guys got to be concerned about that because I saw Jed. I think we were talking about this. Jed picked up Warren this past week on the waiver wires, and he is clearly taking away some carries from Najee Harris. I mean, I think what do you call it? The Pittsburgh offense is starting to kind of come into its own, right? This past week was actually pretty good, but then you saw Pickens score on a run. You saw Warren score on a run. So I think those are some of the worries I have with the Najee Harris. I do still hope, right? Like I have not decided today if the draft is going on, if I'm going to keep him. But I've been keeping an eye out on it. So, yeah.
Jed, on the other end, let's begin to wrap up as well, too. Kansas City. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 6 plays, no carries. Pachenko, on the other hand, carried the ball 16 times for 82 yards, and Kadarius Toney looked pretty good.
Yeah, Pachenko, and he's available. I was going to say he's a waiver wire target because clearly they were not happy for whatever reason with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think that's a really good pickup. But again, with Kansas City running backs, you just got to temper your expectations. That's never going to be where the majority of the points are, but somebody's got to run the ball. So it's not a bad move.
I did not want to drop off Pacheco, but I needed to so I can pick up a Justin Fields. And then I also had to drop a Kadarius Toney as well too. But like Juju, it'll be interesting to see what happens to Juju Smith-Schuster this week, whether or not he's out for any period of time. But I can see those two actually doing pretty well fantasy wise.
One person who a lot of times, Jim, Rashad White, he started with Leonard Fournette.
Yeah,
carried the ball 22 times, 105 yards.
They've been talking about him every week, right? And I've been holding off because I still had Leonard Fournette. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to wait it out. But I've had him on my players to watch. And then when he went down this week, I was like, oh, I should have picked him up this past week. But, if you watch Leonard Fournette, he's not been rushing a lot. He's been getting some goal line and scoring, and that's how he gets his points. But White has been the one that they've relied on to get the bulk of the carries. And this week, he had over 100 yards rushing, and maybe after this break, most likely will be the number 1 running back.
Yep, Chad. If you were to look at your top waiver wire pickups, who are you? I mean, is it White? Is it Darnell Mooney? Is it Allen Robinson? Is it Pachenko? Who's your number 1 waiver wire that you're looking at? Kadarius Toney?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you need. Again, if you need a wide receiver or if you need a running back, I think at wide receiver for me, I'm taking a flyer on Watson. I know it was just kind of a splash in the pan, but I feel like that's the guy that I'm hoping will pay out. At running back, a lot of different options. I know Robinson was dropped in a lot of leagues. I dropped him in one league. He's someone to look at. But I kind of like Pacheco. I think Pacheco is not a bad move. If you're looking for help at running back, but really it all depends on what position you need. And then if you're in the hunt for next week or if you're in the hunt for the playoffs, and then based on those two is how you can decide.
Yeah. Jim, would you pick up a Gus? I'm thinking about, would you guys pick up a Gus Edwards?
Gus Edwards?
This week? Yeah.
I saw that. That's interesting. I think Baltimore has dropped off the radar a little bit. That's not a bad move. Kind of sneaky.
Yeah. I mean, here's the players I'm watching, right? The players I'm watching is Brian Robinson. I'm looking at a Christian Watson, a Van Jefferson, a Pacheco, a Kadarius Toney. The only person that really somewhat intrigues me, that is out there is a Paris Campbell. He's actually been doing decent, more better than any of the other wide receivers out there.
Well, that's an interesting one because of Matt Ryan starting and playing and winning, it does bring him into the mix. And I was looking at that too. I don't know what's wrong with Pittman. Like I feel like with Ryan back, Pittman would be, the receiver of everything, but it's not. So yeah, that's not a bad pickup.
Oh, okay. So that's the other point. Were you guys surprised Ryan came back?
I was, because he just made, so by doing that, he just made, I think, another 10 million.
No,
right?
yeah,
So,
totally. Yeah.
So it was a great move for him. But yeah, I was very surprised that they went back to him. But they won. So
no, I mean, Jonathan Taylor scored a touchdown and he had over 100 yards rushing, right? Paris Campbell had 17 fantasy points. So I feel like the offense is better when Ryan is in there. But you're right. I was like, I'm surprised that they quickly dumped their rookie quarterback and decided to give the money to Matt Ryan for this.
You know what? I bet at the end of the day, this was the owner saying, we got to give the new coach, Jeff Saturday, the best chance to win his first game. And so he was willing to pay that extra money. There was so much backlash against it, and I totally agreed with it all. I hope they can figure that out because, man, it looked really, really bad.
I was surprised there was so much backlash against Jeff Saturday. I mean, here's my thing, right? Yeah, you might not agree with it, and yes, some people might say that this hurts coaching, but I feel like each team has. If you want to pick that person as the coach, go ahead. I think the biggest issue was they said that he was going to be interim, and it doesn't look like he's interim status. I actually think they're trying to take a chance on him to be a longer term coach than just interim.
Yeah. Well, I think what it rubbed people the wrong way was apparently he had an open invitation to be an assistant coach for 2 years and basically turned that down since he retired and then essentially just jumped straight into the head coaching role. So I think that's what kind of ticked people off.
No, remember he was a consultant.
Yeah.
Jim, who's your number one waiver wire pickup that you're going all in for?
Hold on. Wait. Give me 1 minute. I just want to see where you and I stand on the waiver wire before I tell you who I want to go in for. So hold on 1 minute. I did.
He doesn't want to give up.
I know. Okay. Tommy is I'm at 2, and Tommy is at 3. Okay. All right. I'll tell you now. I want Jonathan Sanborn from the Bears.
Oh, good. Interesting.
You're right. I want Jonathan Sanborn. Right? Yeah. I want because I need. Did you see how well that guy did? I was like, so that's who I'm going to try to go after for my first waiver wire.
Got it.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, the guy that I'm actually, if Rachaad White is there, I'm going after Rachaad White. That's the guy I'm doing this week.
Rachaad White over Jonathan. You not Jonathan Sanborn?
I already picked him up in our other league.
I know. Yeah. Actually, that's actually a pretty good pickup because when I saw it, I forgot he was starting. And when you picked him up and it registered, I was like, oh, I don't know if you guys pay attention. I look at who you guys pick up because I was like, there's a reason they're picking him up, and I got to figure out why.
Hey, I was holding on to Shaq Leonard for the longest time. And I said, you know what, forget it. I'm cutting ties with Shaq Leonard right now.
Yeah, I've got him on one team, but he's on IR, so it's not taking up a spot. But he's been such a waste.
Well, that's why Kyle Pitts, I almost dropped him this week to pick up, and I might still drop him this week to pick up somebody. But for a dynasty league, I was like, do I really want to drop him right now? But then I was like, I'm not gonna. I doubt I'm gonna keep him from a dynasty league, for next year. So I might as well drop him right now.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk a little bit about basketball. Chad, I've been trying to convince Jimmy. I actually have 4 players to him right now for Damian Lillard. I said I'll give you 4 players for Damian Lillard.
Ooh.
No, I'm not. I told him his team is so stacked.
Oh.
I'm not going to take a bunch of 4 mediocre players just so you can have an even more stacked team with Damian.
Yeah,
Lillard.
Tommy, you're ruining our league because it's crazy how good you are.
Look, I offered him for Damian Lillard, Keldon Johnson, Keegan Murray, Jamal Murray, and Chris Middleton.
Not worth it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm never a fan of multiple lopsided trades, 2 for 1 or 3 for 1. I'm never a fan of those.
Actually, yesterday night, I skipped over from the Monday Night Football game, and I was watching Golden State versus San Antonio. One, you don't know anybody in San Antonio.
Yeah.
But two, those guys are scrappy. You know, like you don't know any of those guys, but they were holding their own against the Warriors. And I was like, I have no clue who half these people are, anyways.
Yeah. Other than that, any other lasting thoughts? Crypto is down with that bankruptcy. I mean, things are going. The Democrats ended up winning the Senate. I mean, it was a very close race. Okay, one thing before you say anything. How did Herschel Walker? I'm sitting there watching him. How the heck did he get that far?
He better lose. He better lose. If he doesn't lose, I am never like that. That is insane. Like he should lose. If he doesn't lose, I'm never traveling to that state. Hey, I got to take off, guys.
All right. The big news today is Trump going to announce?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.